Well, friends, welcome back to Faith in Pieces, a podcast of Mosaic United Methodist Church, where we build our faith together piece by piece and story by story. We've taken a couple of weeks off, but as you all know, it is Advent season. And so we wanted to gather and have this weekly opportunity where we can talk more about Advent and also talk about the sermon series that we're currently in called Incarnate. And every single week of this Advent series, we're going to talk about the incarnation of Jesus and what it means for us. And so we have 4 different topics that we're covering. We're covering what it means that God is with us. We're talking about what it means that God is in us. We're talking about what it means that God works through us. And we're talking about what it means that God is among us. And so we're going to provide this space so that we can kind of talk about the sermon from this past Sunday and also just kind of flesh it out a little bit more, have a little bit more dialogue. But one of the things that we want to do is do a lighting of the Advent wreath during the podcast. I think we can't light candles at Blyle. And so we were like, well, I feel like we need to light candles somewhere.
Now we can do it.
Like, what better place to do it than this podcast? So
awesome. In this season of anticipation, we remember that the God who formed the galaxies has drawn near to us, not in thunder or spectacle, but in the quiet radiance of the incarnate one. The writer of Hebrews tells us that Christ is the reflection of God's glory and the exact imprint of God's very being. In him, we see the heart of God made visible. In him, we glimpse the world as it was always meant to be, healed, renewed, and whole.
So in these early days of Advent, we dare to hope. We hope because God has never abandoned the world. We hope because the light has entered the darkness and the darkness has not overcome it. We hope because Christ has come, Christ is with us, and Christ will come again.
Today we light the first candle. A small flame, yet a steady witness that God's promises still hold. May this light remind us that the hope is not wishful thinking, but faithful living, choosing day by day to trust the one who bears the brightness of God's glory among us.
Incarnate God, you are with us even now. As this candle burns, kindle in us a deeper longing for your coming kingdom. Shape our hopes so they resemble yours. Hope that heals, hope that restores, hope that takes on flesh through our very lives. That was beautiful. I'm so glad that we did that.
Yes, there's always something really.
And you did a great job, I think, in modeling that. Like sometimes things don't go as planned, and we have to continue to try to light the candle multiple times. You know,
it happens.
So this week we kicked off this series and talking about what it means that God is with us. And the passage that we used in the sermon this past week was very brief, but it was from Hebrews 1, verse 3a, just the very first part of the verse, where Hebrews says, he is the reflection of God's glory and the exact imprint of God's very being, and he sustains all things by his powerful word. So one of the things that we talked about in the sermon on Sunday was that what has always been abstract becomes real through Jesus. Yeah. And so whenever I was talking about that on Sunday, what I tried to talk about was like the history of the faith for those people who were living before Jesus and how they interacted with their faith.
Right.
And so we talked about things like people having to hear the stories of Scripture. They didn't have a copy of the Bible in their hands, but these were stories that were passed down orally from parents to child. Mm-hmm. These would happen over shared meals together. We talked about liturgies and rituals that people would go through weekly, certain festivals they would celebrate in order to feel closer to God, sacrifices, burnt offerings they would have to be made in order to be made clean by God, right. All these different things. And so like when I was talking about what it means that what has been abstract has become real, what did you think about that?
So when I think about that, I think about those things that have always been, unable to be touched. Like we're gonna be healed, but you can't see it right now. Like it, But with Jesus, they could see it. They could
Yeah.
feel it. They could touch it. They could hear it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that each time Jesus interacts with someone, there is a element of each one of those things being made real, not just for the individual, but for everyone around them.
Right.
Right? It's the restoration into community, restoration into life.
Yeah.
It is healing. It is whatever. These abstract things that the Messiah who is to come will take care of. And here Jesus is the Messiah here, and he is taking care of that. So it's not abstract anymore, because Jesus is not abstract. He is flesh and blood.
Right. And and I think too, like, as I was even writing that sermon, sometimes I just like pop into Eric's office and just like bother him with the most complex question I can possibly think of at 9:30 in the morning as I'm writing. But I was thinking about this whole concept about like the abstract becoming real. And one of the terms that he used is like thinking about the history of our faith. There have always been, before Jesus, there was these things that acted as like the intermediary to like get us to experience God.
Yeah.
Right. Of like the rituals and the sacrifices that we would make, that we would do these things in order to like feel the presence or receive the grace of God.
Right.
And that through Jesus, he has become the intermediary as God himself. Right. But I think too, like, there's still a sense of like abstractness to our faith, right? Like there's still questions that we have.
Oh, yeah.
Like I know for me, like the question that I get all the time, and I'm sure you do too, is like, why do bad things happen to good people?
Absolutely.
Right.
All
And
the time.
I'm sure like there are other questions too that we still wrestle with that we don't have the answer to.
Right. No, I mean, I think it's one of those where you just, at the end of the day, it's you still hold on to the promises that God has given you and the faith and the hope you find in Jesus Christ.
Right.
Even if there are still abstract pieces of your faith or of your life, and you can't see Jesus, you can't physically touch Jesus, but you hold on to those promises because we do have abstract questions and things that we can't answer.
Yeah. And I think too, like, now that we have the story of Jesus, not only in Advent, but as we read through the Gospels and we see what Jesus said and what Jesus did, the questions that we have that deal with the abstract, we now have a more helpful way of working through that because we've seen God in the flesh speak about these things, do these things, work these wonders. And it allows us to have more of a sense of who God is and who God is calling us to be.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, like, for me, like, it's important to recognize that there are still abstract things in this world that we will never understand, no matter how much we try, no matter how much we pray. But a lot of the abstractness that used to exist no longer exists because
it was fulfilled with Jesus. Yeah.
I think, like, as I was reading the scripture passage this week, it was very short, so there wasn't a whole lot to work with. But I think the phrase that always stuck out to me was the exact imprint, right? And it doesn't say that like Jesus was this model or that Jesus was
he looked a little like him.
Right. He says exact imprint. And I think for us, like, that's the greatest joy that we celebrate in Advent is that God came to be with us purely in God's self.
Yeah.
Right. So we talked about like the areas where we feel that God is with us, like where we can truly sense that. So we broke that down in like 4 key areas. But Whitney, how have you seen God be with you in your joy?
Oh, in my joy. I will never forget the moment that Jace was wheeled out to us. Like, we had struggled for years through infertility and adoption. And, we met the birth mother for the first time at the hospital the day he was born. And so we're standing in the hallway, and the nurse said, "You'll hear twinkle, twinkle, little star, and he's born." And I still didn't believe it because I was like, okay, she could change her mind because we had failed adoptions. Yeah. But I'll never forget her wheeling Jace out to me. And she said, "Here you go, Mom." And I was like, "Can I touch him?" Like, she's like, "Yeah, he's yours." And I just remember like that feeling of God just being there and saying like, "This is what I promised you." Because through all of it, I just felt that God was like, I'm going to keep my promise. And so in that moment, like it was pure joy. Like there was nothing else but joy.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling that for him.
Yeah. That's powerful. I won't ask you all of these, so I'll take a couple of mine. We talked about how God is with us in our sorrow. I think for me, like the most recent like personal experience that I've had like with sorrow, where I truly felt like God is working within this in the middle of this sorrow is, and I know this may trigger some folks, but like during the period of disaffiliation, like that was a big period for me of like a lot of what I had always had was being lost and not sure where to go. But even before I knew where I was going, I felt God working within my sorrow to illuminate things of like, what is the church called to be? Who is the church called to be? And what is your role still to play within this sorrow? Like, how do you take this and learn from it? Before even like what the next step looked like, which was here. So I think it's like always important that when we're going through sorrow, we can ask questions of like, how do I see God working through this sorrow? What healing is happening? What healing is still yet to come?
Right.
And then what is God teaching me within this? Right. And I, to say that is not like God gives us, right. It's not God gives us sorrow so that we can learn from it. But I think there are opportunities that when we experience sorrow, there may be things that we do learn in the middle of that that are a natural result of it. So that's one for me.
No, I think that's absolutely true. Like when we're going through it, we can look for ways in which we can grow and be stretched, even when we're feeling the worst of it. Yeah.
And I think another like element of sorrow too is like with the passing of a loved one or of like an unforeseen diagnosis. Like one of the things that I always make sure to tell families who are grieving and experiencing that type of sorrow is that like I pray that you will see the light and the promise of the power of the resurrection, right? So I think in our sorrows, knowing that like death and sickness and that pain does not have that final sting, that's because God is with us, right? That's the hope that we cherish within that sorrow too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, Definitely.
How have you seen God be with you in your questions?
Oh, wow. I mean, I'm naturally gonna have questions and push back on things. Like that's just who I am. Anyone who's spent more than 5 minutes with me kind of understand that. But I've always looked at questions of faith, questions of trying to understand something as an opportunity to draw closer to God, to feel God with me, even if I'm struggling with something, with those questions that don't have an answer. When I've walked with families who have lost a loved one, who have lost a child, like we can't give them an answer as to why. And so even in those moments when I have questions, when I have doubts, the dreaded D word that no one wants to admit that they actually have, I have always found it as an opportunity to draw closer to God, because I feel like I sometimes don't have anywhere else to go. God doesn't always just like drop a written note.
Right.
Well, he's never done that, but
it's not like Google.
Yeah.
Right.
There have been times.
It doesn't give you like a nice AI synopsis of your question.
There have been times when I have literally said, "Can we just have a burning bush moment?" And Tim does not appreciate that. He's like, "Please stop asking God to light the shrubbery on fire." But in those questions, and I always try and tell elders that the questions are not bad. They bring us closer with God. We can feel God with us in those moments of doubt, in those moments of struggle, when we question something happening to us. So just so they are able to see God with them, even in the questions.
I think it's always important to recognize God with us in our questions. Doesn't mean that God is with us and will answer our questions. But there is power in drawing closer to God in those seasons of questions, right? There may be another question that you're not even asking, that God helps illuminate for you, that's been longing within your soul that you haven't been able to name.
Yeah.
Like in that process too. Yeah. The last area that we talked about for God with us is God with us in our humanity. And like this one is the most powerful one for me. Because I think like in our lives, it is important to recognize that all of the emotions that we experience, all of the feelings that we have, we worship a God who came to take on flesh and has wrestled with those same emotions.
Yeah.
Right. There's truly like no other faith that wrestles with that or allows us to even think about that like our God came to be here with us in the flesh and knows what it is like to experience joy, to experience laughter, to experience companionship, but to also experience pain, betrayal, suffering, even the sting of death. Right. So I think there's a lot of hope to be taken that like when I go through things or when we go through things in our lives, God has been there too.
Right.
Right. And I think there's just there's companionship within that with God that's so powerful.
And I think it's so important to understand that Jesus is God in human flesh. That doesn't mean that it was yes, Jesus was perfect. Jesus didn't sin, but that doesn't mean his life did not have moments of hardship, of grief. We know Joseph died at some point. Like Joseph was his earthly father. Like he experienced profound grief. Like he dealt with hard things. And I think understanding that helps others relate more to Jesus than just saying, oh, there's this perfect man who came and, sacrificed himself and rose from the dead. I one of my favorite images is pissed off Jesus who flips the table. Like I think it shows his humanity, which I think is, like you said, so important for us to remember and understand. God with us is God and humanity together.
One of the things that like, this is kind of getting us aside a little bit, but like thinking about God and Jesus and humanity, like we don't get like anything about Jesus being a teenager, but like I would always love to see like, was Jesus like a really moody teenager? Like how did Jesus treat Mary and Joseph when he was a teenager, right? Like I'm sure that probably sticks out for you too.
Oh yeah.
So we talked about all these moments where we feel that God is with us and how that brings us joy and that brings us hope. But then we talked about like, how do we recognize God with us? Like when we're trying to search, where is God with me right now? How do we do that? So one of the practices we talked about was like the reading of scripture and the practice of studying it both individually, like in quiet time by ourselves where we read, but also communally in places like church and places like small groups and other gatherings. I'm gonna put you on the spot because this is not on the script. If somebody was wondering like, okay, well, during Advent, where is a place in the Bible that I could really plug in for this 4-week period? Where is a book? Where is a place? Where would you recommend? I'm really putting Whitney on the spot. You really are putting Whitney on the
spot. I mean, the easy answer would be like, go and read the Nativity.
Right.
Like, obviously. Yeah. I think one of the most powerful things about Advent is that Advent gets us to the cross. Advent is only important because of what happened on Good Friday. And so I would say read the Advent story and then go read the crucifixion and the Easter story. Because we get Advent God with us so that God with us could sacrifice himself so we could always be with God. I think that people like Advent a little bit more than Lent because Lent gets us to something extremely hard.
Right.
But we can't have Advent without that.
Yeah. I agree. I think, and I've said this so many times before, and I'm just becoming like an absolute, I guess like the kids would call it a stan, right? But like, I guess that I like really, really stan the Gospel of Luke in this season because I think it tells the story of Christmas very well.
It does.
But then I think too, like it is the most centric gospel that shows Jesus's relationship with the Gentiles, with people who have
Yeah.
always belonged outside of the realm of God's family, right?
Yeah.
And so I think in this season, like when we embrace Jesus coming to be with us, not just Jesus coming to be with a couple of people, but with all of us.
Yeah.
I think that gospel like really ties itself well into that narrative.
Yeah.
And it also, I mean, reading it to completion, it gets us all the way through
Yep.
the events of Holy Week, Good Friday, and the resurrection too. And then I also think like this may be a weird one, but I think like Genesis is a really good place to plug into.
Yeah.
Right. We see like the creation of all of these things and the beginning of the story of God that leads all the way up to Jesus and even beyond it. But I think it paints the picture well of like, this is the world that God created to be. Humanity fell very quickly in the creation narrative. And then through the birth of Jesus, that process of rebuilding and healing happens in the way that God always intended for it to be. All right, and the other practice we talked about was the practice of journaling. Now, I talked about this on Sunday. I do this a lot. I talked about this. I'm really bad at this.
I'm horrible.
I was hoping that you'd be good at it, so you could give us.
I've attempted to do it. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not my thing. Yeah.
I have a lot of people that are really important in my life that do this a lot. Like one of my mom's has done this for years and talks about how helpful it is. And there have been seasons in my life where I've done it well and then kind of fallen out of rhythm. But one of the things that I've always noticed that when I journal, it allows me to put all the things that I'm experiencing, seeing, feeling, tasting, hearing, all of those senses onto paper, right? And I think there is a lot of value in being able to write those things down and tangibly like say like, this is what I am experiencing.
Yeah.
And then as you continue to do that, go back and read and see like, how was God working in this season of my life to get me to this new place that I am right now? And I think like there's a testament to be found there in how God is moving with us and being able to read it from your own pen, right?
Well, funny enough, I don't journal, but my best friend I've known since I was 13. She and I, grew up junior high school together and are still friends. I would say that if I journal, I journal with her. Like I will tell her my thoughts, my feelings, everything going on. She does with me. And then we do just naturally go back to, hey, do you remember when this was going on? And then like, now, how are you feeling about it? So, I mean, we are human journals if that exists.
We've stopped doing it, but we actually did it for probably a year or two. I have a friend who's a pastor where we got in the habit of the last thing that we did before we went to bed was text each other 3 things that we're grateful for that happened today. And we need to get back into doing that because it allowed me to go to bed every single night, having that be the last thing that I did. And even on days where things were as hard as they could possibly be, like we made a commitment, like find 3 things, like, and it could be something as simple as like dinner was good. Right. Like, or like, like things went well. Like it could be that vague, but being able to put that down pen to paper and then be able to look back on like
and see it.
How God has been working even in the difficult times has been really helpful too.
Because I think when you get in the mode of being, noticing what you're thankful for, speaking it out loud, you do start to see God with you in different ways, right? If all you're doing is going negative, you're not gonna feel that tug, that feeling, that God with you feeling. But if you remember to text what you're thankful for, or stop and be thankful for something, text your friend, whatever, journal, however it brings you comfort, you do start to see God with you. And I think that's the point, right? You want to get to a point where whatever you're doing in whatever phase of life, you are actively and consciously noticing that God is with you. That you feel it, you know it, you speak it, and you live it out.
I think what you just said of like recognizing that God is with you and being able to vocalize that, like that's the whole point of what we try to talk about on Sunday. is that we know through the incarnation of Jesus that God came to be with us.
Right.
And as a result, what we're called to do is really just press into that and remember that God is with us. And as we remember, find those places where God truly is with us.
Yeah.
Because that's what gives us hope. That's what gives us meaning. That's what gives us purpose. And that's what calls us into the action of the church, to be a church that goes out and serves with our neighbors and does all the other values that we talk about each and every Sunday. So, man. Well, yeah, so that's kind of what we talked about on Sunday. We're going to continue through this Incarnate series. Next week, we're going to talk about what it means that God works within us. And one of the things I'm really excited about for this Advent series is that you're going to hear multiple voices on Sunday mornings. You'll hear me twice at the very beginning of this, but then I think you're doing the third week in God through us, and then we'll hear from Eric with God among us. And so just excited that we'll have all these different voices talking about what the incarnation means and what it means for us. But thanks for tuning in this week. Always be sure to like and subscribe and to share this. It may be helpful for someone that you know who may be going through a rough time right now. It's always important to remember that God is with us and that the incarnation of Jesus changes everything about this life. So, friends, that's the end of episode 1 of this Incarnate series. We're looking forward to continuing this each week, continue to light the candles, have all these nice Christmas decorations. And so we're looking forward to seeing you next week, and we'll see you soon.